We will review the 2021 third quarter performance report, and those are the months of July, August, and September of this year. We will talk about the temporary service reduction coming to help address our staffing shortage. I will touch on hiring initiatives, and then we will recognize one of our exemplary employees. So let me start with the COVID update. We continue to await directions from Oregon OSHA as how we will apply the federal vaccine mandate for large employers with 100 or more employees. The release of that information is pending the outcome of legal challenges. And in the meantime, the government has extended its mask requirements while to our riding transit riders to March 18th, 2022. Really want to just pause for a moment and just thank our riders for their continued compliance and our employees as we get through this pandemic. We're also continuing to encourage our employees to get vaccinated if they haven't already, and to really consider a booster shot. TriMet is closely monitoring developments at the local, state, and federal levels, and we will respond accordingly. Kind of move into ridership for November 2021. We've provided nearly 4 million trips in November. Ridership is down about 50% from where we were in November of 2019, prior to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it was nearly 27% higher than it was at this time last year. So that's welcome news as we continue to rebuild and recover our ridership. I would like to transition now to how our vehicles and equipment have been performing. I'd like to invite Miles Crumley, he's our Manager of Service Performance and Analysis, to present our third quarter performance report. Miles, are you available?
Good morning. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, TriMet board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Am I bringing it up, or is somebody else bringing up the presentation?
Let's see here. I know Kim was having some technical difficulties. Let's just see if she could bring it up here.
If not, I have it.
See if you can share it, Miles.
Okay.
Great.
So good morning, TriMet board. My name is Miles Crumley. I'm the Manager of Service Performance and Analysis. I will be presenting to you the Quarter 3 TriMet Quarterly Report. This covers the months of July, August, and September. We continue to maintain safe operating environment for customers and staff in face of an ongoing pandemic, civil unrest, wildfires, extreme weather, and a sustained 50% decline in ridership. First off, to talk about on-time performance for bus, Max, and West. Between the last quarter and this quarter, we have seen an increase in on-time performance for West. West had some wayside construction that was going on previously. That work is now completed, and so their on-time performance has returned to typically where they normally operate. For bus, we're starting to see a decline in on-time performance. This we're attributing to increased traffic on the roadways as the people begin to adjust to the pandemic. We also did see a slight decline in our Max on-time performance, and this was due to heat and weather during August. Next are up fixed route bus operator complaints. Between this period last year and current period, we're down about 4.7 per 100,000 boardings. We continue to see the complaints come into these three categories, mainly of public relations, service delivery, and safety related. However, between this quarter and last quarter, we're actually seeing that the total number of complaints is actually decreasing. Next up are max operator complaints. Between this period last year and the previous report of Q2, the number I would say is flat as a data person. And so we're still seeing about 2.1 complaints per 100,000 boardings on max. Next are rail rule violations. Between this period last year in 2020 and 2021, we've seen an increase by about 10.2 rail rule violations per million miles operated. This is a much, even though this is an increase over where we were last year, it is an improvement of where we were during Q2, where we saw this spike for the April, May, and June quarterly performance report. Training does continue to work with probationary operators, and there are a couple other rail initiatives to bring this number down. Lift miles between road calls. We did see a decline in miles between road calls. This chart, when you read it, you have to read it the inverse. Lower number typically means worse. Higher number means better. However, Lyft continues to rely on the oldest vehicles due to COVID-19 capacity restrictions. However, these vehicles are scheduled to be retired at the end of FY23, and so we would expect to see an improvement after these vehicles are removed from service. Next is fixed route mean distance between failure. We did see a slight improvement of about 691 miles between this time last year. Again, the industry standard for a mean distance between failures is somewhere between 10 and 11,000 miles. And so we are dealt well within what the industry would expect for our fleet of vehicles. Light rail mean distance between failure, we did see a decrease, and so an increase in number of incidents related to mean distance between failures for the light rail vehicles. This is related to auxiliary inverters on our oldest vehicles, our Type 1 and Type 2 vehicles. We are seeing some electrical control issues on the Type 2s and 3s and ongoing propulsion issues with the 1s and 2s. The Type 1 vehicles are also scheduled to be removed from service sometime in FY23. So again, we would expect to see an improvement after those vehicles are removed from service. Fixed route bus collisions, we did see an increase in collisions between this period last year, but it is a decrease from Q2 of 2021. Again, because of the increased traffic on the roadways, we are seeing an increase in mirror strikes, or not necessarily an increase in mirror strikes, but the total volume of collisions is made up primarily of mirror strikes. And so as traffic increases, it's something that we would just expect to see. And max collisions per 100,000 miles are very low at this point. We're seeing about 1.02 per 100,000 miles operated. So this doesn't necessarily have that big of a bearing based on traffic, but this we can attribute to just how we operate our vehicles. That's that. Are there any questions?
I do have a question. It's Lori Bauman. I think it was slide number 2 on the on-time performance, that it's been a decrease in on-time performance for bus, and you mentioned that the increase in traffic has an impact on that. Does our staffing issues have an effect on on-time performance? Does that come into that measurement, the shortage of bus drivers?
Yes, and that also appears in the operator complaints as well for fixed route bus. And so my understanding is that even though there's an operator shortage, we're covering well over 95 to 97% of our scheduled service on a day-to-day basis. However, in order to do that, we have to make decisions as to when we actually put buses into service based on staffing. And so at some times during the day, you will see buses going by as we're trying to get the buses back on schedule. And in that process, that also has an impact on our on-time performance because those routes might not actually be starting on time. And so as we get staff available, we will deploy those resources so that we can keep the region moving.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. So
Okay.
General Manager Dessou.
Thanks, President Simmons. So Miles, thank you. We appreciate the report.
Thank you.
And just a couple of weeks, on January 9th, TriMet will begin a temporary service reduction. So kind of going on the trail of what Miles just stated here, we made that difficult decision to cut back service in response to the most critical staffing shortage in TriMet history. And we are not alone throughout this country. I would say more than 75% of the transit agencies across the United States is going through this difficult decision to cut service back due to recruitment and retention. We looked at two options: continue to have riders wait for buses that will never arrive due to the lack of staff, or adjust the service so that our riders could plan for reduced frequency, but have their bus show up when they expect it to be there. Reliability. And I know we've had conversations about relevance and who we are. So we chose the latter. It makes our schedules more reliable and reduces the strain on our operators right now with burnout, and also with attrition. We've worked hard to cover the shortage day to day. We will be temporarily reducing service on 20, and I repeat, 20 bus lines starting Sunday, January 9th, 2022. Most of those lines will see reductions in weekday service. We do apologize to our riders, and we know that it's not ideal, and we would much rather be expanding service right now as we recover riders. But this is temporarily and necessary while we work to recruit, to hire, and to train bus operators. Speaking of hiring, those efforts have intensified in the recent weeks as new hiring initiatives and incentives taken effect. On November 29th, TriMet announced a $2,500 bonus for all newly hired operators. During the week following the announcement, TriMet received 67 applications. That's 5 times the number of applications we received the previous week. We also recently increased the starting pay for bus operators to $21.36 per hour. It's an improvement of more than $4 per hour. And again, everyone in the country now is moving. I sent some of you an article in the New York Times showing what New York Transit Agency is doing in New York City. They're hiring back retirees now and paying them $35,000 for 3 months just to come back and work. We did see a positive response to our bonus announcement, and it's important to remember that the hiring process takes some time. Also, all TriMet bus operators must successfully complete our 7-week training program before they can go out on the road on their own. So this is a process, but we are making progress, and we're really moving fast in this situation here. I'm very hopeful that the momentum will continue as we close out this year and really roll into 2022. Now, I'd like to take a moment to recognize one of our employees. She's helped a person in need while in her role as the customer service field outreach and community relations representative, and she likely saved his life. Her name is Colleen Hildebrand, and I'd like to invite her manager, Heather Rogers, to describe to you Colleen's experience in her actions. Heather?
Thank you, General Manager Sam Dessou. I really appreciate your introduction. And good morning also to our TriMet Board of Directors. It's my honor to highlight Colleen Hildebrand, who's on our on-street field field representative team. Let me take a drink really quick. I'm sorry. Hold on just a moment. I'm so sorry. Recently, Colleen was working a shift at a PDX when she noticed someone who looked like he might need assistance. After engaging him in conversation, she learned that he had consumed 2 bottles of blood pressure medication in a suicide attempt. She persuaded him to sit with her while she called for medical assistance and talked to him about his life until paramedics arrived. And thanks to the information that she gathered from this conversation, she was able to answer some of the questions from EMTs and to the airport security chief. The man was later transported to the hospital for treatment. As her manager, I would like to thank Colleen again for her service to our community and for representing TriMet in the field, and to thank you for continuing to do this important work. Thank you for your time today. Colleen, did you have anything that you would like to say at this time?
Hi. I was just happy to help the individual that needed the assistance. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen, as well, on behalf of the board.
So Colleen, as TriMet's general manager, I would like to personally thank you as well for showing kindness and compassion to a stranger in need. This is how TriMet employees make a difference in our community day in and day out. And I just want you to know that we appreciate your efforts as a representative of TriMet, but also as a person who embraces humanity. You make us feel very proud and very grateful. So thank you. President Simmons, would you or any of the board members like to make any comments here?
Let me check and see if any board members would like to respond. Looking. Director Edwards.
Thank you. Colleen, I just, applaud you for being aware and of what's going on around you, because it's important. A lot of times we're just kind of just doing our jobs and not paying attention to what's happening, just making sure that we're doing our jobs appropriately. But you were paying attention to your fellow brothers and sisters around you, making sure that they were safe, and recognizing that one of them wasn't safe. And so thank you very much for being aware of your surroundings and being there for someone when they especially needed someone to be there for them.
Thank you.
I'm looking to see if there's anyone else that would like to speak.
I can go.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I always struggle with the hands up function, but Colleen, it's just so wonderful to have you here just in our virtual board meeting and to have this recognition and honor. And, I think what I just want to say is I echo what all the directors have said. And I also just want to say that our operators I think are really the heart and soul of our organization. You go out every single day and put on the TriMet uniform, and you interact so much with humanity and people from all walks of life and experiences. And so it is not an easy job, but it is a big job. And I think that you just through your actions have just really made all of us proud. So thank you so much. And I wish we could have many, many more colleagues in our organization. I'm sure there are other folks like you out there as well who just do heroic things. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Simmons. Colleen, I just wanted to recognize that you were not only someone's angel that day. You really affected someone's life in a major way, but you did it while representing TriMet as well. And so, thank you for your humanity, and thank you for being an ambassador each and every day. Folks watched that happen. Folks that were in your vehicle and outside your vehicle watched that happen, and that's an important moment for our community. So I really I'm grateful to have you on our team and as part of the face of this very important work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Lewis, and followed by Director Bauman.
Colleen, wow, wow, applause, applause, marching band, all those good, feel good things. Echoing everything the other directors have said. Thank you for stepping forward and stepping up. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Director
you.
Bauman.
Yes, hey, Colleen, I want to just comment, so many people are struggling with mental health issues right now, and a lot of those struggles go on maybe behind the scenes and behind closed doors, but sometimes they happen in public. And we are just so grateful that you were there to make a difference in this person's life, and really, really step up. And I've said it before, but this is what TriMet's all about. We're the eyes out in the community. And so you were in a really unique situation to make a difference, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Colleen, on behalf of the agency and the full board. Job well done. Really appreciate it. General Manager DeSue.
Yes, thank you, President Simmons. And again, Colleen, thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for your service. A couple more points just to wrap up. So regarding the points that Doug Allen made and the public outreach this morning, Lance Ertz and his TOT real estate strategy and design team will discuss the specifics when we get to that point. But what I do want to say is we are working towards finalizing details on the project. We've worked with the different neighborhoods and business groups to understand their needs. And we've put forth a project that is responsive to everyone's needs, as well as building 202 affordable housing. So more to follow here when we get to that point. Back to your point, Director Edwards, that you made as far as Nextdoor website. I've been told that we have not been allowed on Nextdoor because we are a governmental agency. But since then, they've relaxed their rules, and JC and his team are going to look into it today. So we'll have more information to follow up there. And the points that Cassie Wilson made in public comment, I'm going to take that information and sit down with staff and review it. We'll get her information and follow back up with her. And then finally, Director Way and also Gonzalez, as far as the operator involved in the Clackamas event, we have procedures in place that offer help to the operator. I know our transportation leadership did that. That's our standard practice. And as far as recognition, we're working through the overall case to understand it. I think the investigation is just about done. And as soon as that, we will absolutely recognize the employee at that appropriate time, to include bringing that employee in front of the board. So as the sooner I get more information, I'll be able to provide an update. And then as I conclude the GM report, just want to say that December has been a very busy month with the monumental R99 renewable diesel event. We have had great community and business engagement. I've met with Washington County Board of Directors. I've met with the Oregon Environmental Council. I've met with Prosper Portland. I've met with the International Transit Learning Center Board. I've also met with our Portland Business Alliance, and just recently the Oregon Speaker of the House. So a lot of engagement that's going on. So with that, President Simmons, that concludes my report for this morning.
Thank you. Are there any board members with questions for the general manager? Director Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, President Simmons. Quick follow-up, General Manager DeSue. Thanks for the report. The meetings and presentations, it sounds like, that you've had of recent, have they by and large been report outs on our new renewable diesel program and what it's doing for our emissions?
Absolutely. There have been meet and greets with me, with some of the key stakeholders as I move out and get into that community engagement, and then really discussing the renewable diesel and also reducing greenhouse gases throughout the state of Oregon.
Well, I hope it's been well received. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, General Manager Dessou. And now it's time for us to move into our agenda. And we usually start with a consent agenda. For those who are unfamiliar with our meeting, the consent agenda is for items that are routine and may be approved in one blanket motion. And this morning, our consent agenda includes the minutes from our October 27th, 2021 meeting, and resolution authorizing ordinances to be read in title only. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Thomas Kim.
Thank you, Tom.
Second, Keith Edwards.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments before we vote? Hearing none, then we'll take the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. So now we're going to move into our resolutions. Thank you, everyone, for moving us along. Our first resolution is a resolution 21-12-49, and it's authorizing a contract modification with Tate Communications for radio infrastructure, equipment, and services. Mr. General Manager, your comments.
Thanks, President Simmons, members of the board. This is our first resolution before you this morning. And this resolution would authorize a contract modification with Tate Communications for TriMet's mobile radio system. This system is mission critical and a high priority. It's the lifeline connection from the operator to the communications center. It's that connection for operators, for supervisors, for our fleet and facility maintenance, and then all frontline personnel that's out into the system. The system is made up of more than 2,600 mobile radio units on our buses, our trains, our paratransit vehicles, as well as assigned to our supervisors, transit police, security, customer service, and other personnel across the system. Tate Communications equipment and services currently support the radio system and provides sufficient capacity for all TriMet operations. TriMet's IT staff has requested an upgrade to the core control of the radio system, for which Tate has been providing service on an as needed basis. As the core control upgrade is included in the IT division's FY22 budget, this resolution requests a modification to increase our existing contract with Tate from the current $350,000 to about $2.6 million, which covers the cost of the system's core control improvement. Tate also currently holds a sole source contract due to the proprietary nature of the technology involved with the radio system. The company employs 60 people, 26 of whom identified as female or minority. TriMet considers these upgrades critical, again, to our operations. And I ask for your approval. I have here with me Chief Information Officer Ethan Benetton, and also AJ O'Connor, our Director of Intelligent Transportation Systems. So if there are any questions or any follow-up, Ethan or AJ, that need to be brought forward, please.
Well, thank you, Sam. I have nothing to add to that excellent summary, so we're happy to take any questions from the board. Thank you.
Okay, Director Edwards, you have a question?
Thank you for that report and that enhancement. The only question that I have is a further breakdown of the demographics of the employees that work there at Tate. I would just like to see a further breakdown of gender and race of those employees. That's the only question I have.
And thank you, Director Edwards. The information that I have in front of me here, and if procurement's on the line or either Greg Skillman, I've been told that the company employs 60 people and 26 of them are female and or minority. So any further information, Greg or Les, that you could provide, that would be great.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Director Edwards. Let me dig through our files, and we asked for a workforce utilization form to be filled out, so I can dig that up and send it to you, if that's okay.
That would be fine. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Director Gonzalez?
Thank you, President Simmons. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that question Director Edwards brought, and I have another quick question. I want to reinforce the importance of the section on diversity when we're trying to find out, especially from a sole source vendor. But I think in any instance, when we want to know about the composition of the company, it would be great to have information about the demographics of the company, and as well as how those demographics are distributed across the organization, top to bottom, from leadership down. So it'd be interesting to see how we ask our vendors in the procurement process for this information. It might be a good opportunity for us to revisit what that looks like, what that form looks like, what it asks for, how it asks, because this is really important, valuable information, again, from our sole source partners in particular. It helps us lead to I think, bigger conversations about how we are helping, create the workforce of the future. Anyway, so that's my point. The question is simply about the scope and scale of the contract amendment, going from 350K to 2.5K total is a substantial difference. And could you just speak a little to how you arrived at the scale of this? Is it going to be continuing to be provided on an as-needed basis? How far out do you expect this scale or this magnitude of contract to be able to take us out to?
I can answer that. So this request addresses the core software. So when we contracted with Tate over 10 years ago now, this radio system is built on the P25 standard, which is the standard that was post 9/11, so that radio systems were compatible. And all radio vendors, Motorola, Tate, Kenwood, Harris, were building systems that were P25 compatible. And not all the components of that radio system standard each vendor had. So some of it was Tate supplied and some wasn't. And the core software, when we purchased it, was manufactured by Airbus, the large airplane vendor that everyone is familiar with. And about 7 years ago, Motorola decided to buy that component of Airbus. So they bought that component of Airbus, and in an audit of the IT department, it was highlighted that this was a risk because now Motorola owned a key component of one of their competitors' software. So Tate obviously didn't like that either and developed their own software to complete the P25 configuration. So it was end-to-end Tate software then. And Motorola, as was expected, once they bought this Airbus component, they no longer supported it. So they were essentially getting people to try and switch to Motorola, which would have been a $30 million enterprise if that had happened. So what we're doing and why this is so much money is we're replacing that core software with a complete Tate solution. And it's not only just maintaining the existing system, this new core software is compatible with the second phase of the P25 standard. And I know that's probably means nothing, but what it really has an impact for TriMet, because when we move to the P25 standard, that essentially doubles our capacity for the radio system. So we overnight have the core software set up so that TriMet won't have to go ask the federal government for more radio channels for another 60 years once we do this. We'll have to change out the actual mobile and portable radios over time to be able to take advantage of that, but the core system will have the capacity for decades and decades to come. And we will have support for that software for decades to come. And we'll be removing that now Motorola piece of software that they're sunsetting and retiring.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I had one more question, President Simmons.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about the retention of employees at Tate. Given we've had a 10-year contract, and this is so important to TriMet that, especially, I mean, it's major. Number one on the priority list, I would think, or certainly close to it. And given that, I would like to know, I guess, the retention of employees at Tate and the levels of that retention. In other words, the hierarchy. If they don't have a good retention record, if it's is it at the lower level, or is it at the upper level, or is it median? I think that's important information to know, because that speaks to the stability of the contractor that we're using.
It's a good question. We can ask them directly for the actual figures and hard numbers, but I can tell you from our experience, we've been working with the same engineering staff and account reps for over a decade. And Tate is a unique company in that they're a public, I can't remember the New Zealand term, but they're not a stock traded company. They're a trust. They're set up as a trust, so they cannot be broken apart like other companies. So they're a very, very kind of unique company. They are the #1 employer in New Zealand, so they're not small. They're not Motorola huge, but they have been very, very stable.
I'd like to
thank you very much.
I'd like to remind the board in terms of meeting process. For those of you who wish, you review the materials. If you have questions, if you either call me or the general manager ahead of the meeting, they can get the information that you have questions about, and we can advance the meetings far more quickly. So having said that, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Keith Edwards.
Thank you, Director Edwards. Is there a second?
Second, Thomas Kim.
Second, Thomas Kim. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Has anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to Resolution 2, which is 21-12-50. It is authorizing a contract with Corvell Enterprise Compensation Incorporated for Workers' Compensation Program third-party administrator services. Mr. General Manager.
Thanks, President Timmons. This next resolution before you this morning authorizes a contract with Corvell Enterprise for a third-party administrator services for our workers' compensation program. So TriMet uses a third-party administrator to process self-insured workers' compensation claims since our program was created more than 40 years ago. Corvell has provided these services to TriMet since 2011, and the firm currently holds a sole source contract. Due to the limited competition within the market, TriMet requests that the board approve either the sole source agreement with Corvell. This would be for an amount of $1.4 million over 5 years. The total is included in the Finance and Administrative Services operating budget. Corvell employs about 4,000 people and describes its workforce as nearly 79% women and 33% minority. I ask for your approval. I have with me today the Director of Risk Management, Andrew Wilson. He's here to address any questions. Thank you.
Director Kim.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't have a question. I think overall, I, agreed. And as I was reviewing, it makes sense to move forward with this particular one. But moving forward, I just had a comment. I don't know what the cost associated with issuing an RFP is for items like this. And I also understand there's a limited number of firms out there who will take on this sort of work. But I think at the very least, moving forward, giving other firms opportunities to bid, or at least even if it's a short period of time, that RFP process would be helpful, so that we're opening up ourselves up for perhaps even better service for even lower cost. Basically the bottom line of competition, opening it up for competition, would be a wise use of our resources moving forward. And now I do understand that there's a limited number of firms out there who will take on this kind of work, but at the very least, going through that motion would be helpful as we commit large resources for services that we need. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Kim. I know we went through an RFP process, so I'm going to let Andrew Wilson jump in here and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks to the board, and Les and Zach, you can help me out with additional information on this as well. But we did actually engage in an RFI on this, and we got 2 responses. One of the responses was from an outfit that we actually worked with back in 2010 and before. So in 2011, we switched to Corvell, and we actually moved away from that firm due to a lack of performance. So really the RFI brought back 2 proposals to us, and I think at that point we determined not to do the RFP, although I think your point is very, very well taken. Les or Zach, do you have anything to add on the sort of solicitation?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just jump in. Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Board of Directors. So when we have a sole source like this and it comes up for renewal, the contract does, we will often conduct a request for information. We sort of send it out to the market, seeking interest from other firms that would want to potentially compete for an RFP or perform the services for us. So like Andrew said, we did that here, and we received the 2 responses. Based on our historic past experience with TriStar, the other company that responded, we decided to move forward with the sole source, but your point is well taken. And I think, Andrew, Zach, and I have talked about the next time, if this is approved, the next time this comes up for renewal, an RFP is probably warranted, just to see who else is out there, and if TriStar has, changed their team around or has a different approach that would give us a different experience. So point taken. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Director Simmons, sorry, I had a quick question.
Okay.
Sorry, and if I may. So I thank you for this presentation. I know that this is a request to us from staff and the general manager. I just have a very basic, simple question, which is it industry standard or practice to have third-party administration or procurement of services for workers' comp? I guess I'm just trying to understand, 40 years ago was a long time. and maybe that was how it was set up back then. But I'm just curious: is this how other transit agencies process this? Is through third-party vendors?
That's an excellent question, and there is certainly different ways you can structure your risk management department in terms of processing workers' compensation claims. There's a couple different schemes that are available to us as a self-insured down at the state of Oregon in terms of how to be most cost-effective and sort of appropriate for claims handling at our agency. I'll tell you, like the city of Portland self-administers their workers' compensation program, so they actually have employees, city of Portland employees that handle the workers' compensation claims. What this contract does is it essentially gives us a couple employees that are dedicated to us, that are Corvell employees, obviously steeped in the workers' compensation handling in the state of Oregon. Both of them have over 20 years of experience handling workers' compensation claims, so they really do offer good service to us. What being able to use a third-party administrator does is it connects you to sort of the best application of law and training, so that you really do get very, very quality folks. If we did that internally, we would need to have a training program and actually manage that. So that's one offset in some ways. I mean, we're paying for a service which is highly technical. But those schemes do change, and those financial arrangements do change, and it could make it more or less cost effective for us to sort of self-administer versus handle this by a third-party administrator. But I'll say the vast majority of our peers, when you think about Multnomah County and other public agencies that are self-insured, they do have a third-party administrator, and usually it's Corvell right now, because they really are very innovative and offer a lot of technological solutions for our employees. But we'll keep looking at that. 40 years is a long time, Director Way. You're right.
Yes, thank you. That was super helpful, and just for the public to understand how we came to this point of setting it up this way. So thanks.
Now, do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Director Edwards has moved. Is there a second?
Second, Laverne Lewis.
A second.
Laverne, I hear a second from Director Lewis. Thank you. I'm going to call for the vote at this point. Are there any, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. Now we're on to resolution number, I might have too many pages. 21-12-51, and that resolution approves the updated agency safety plan. And for those of you new to the board, this is a process that the board approves every year, so it has to be updated every year. And Mr. General Manager?
Thanks, President Simmons, members of the board. The Federal Transportation Administration requires transit agencies to develop a public transportation agency safety plan and keep it up to date year after year. The FTA also requires that the updated agency safety plan be reviewed by executive leadership and approved by the board. TriMet has completed our annual review and update and now brings this plan before the board for your approval. You've received a copy of the full plan in your board packet, and it's also online. I would like to just bring John Gilmore in. He's our interim director of system safety, just to provide just a little bit more additional background and overview. John?
Good morning, President Simmons and members of the board. Again, thanks for that introduction. We did, as an agency, approve this document last December. It is our commitment to safety. It guides our implementation strategies for improving our safety across the agency. You can go to the second slide. So as a quick highlight, there are a few members of the board that probably aren't familiar with the agency safety plan. So I just wanted to give some really high level pieces here. we do require the general manager, the accountable executive, to sign this each year to include and be approved by the board of directors, and that's per regulation. It's also a document that's required by regulation for any agency that receives federal funding. So it's something that not only is a regulatory item, but it really helps guide where we're taking this agency in valuable tools and improving the safety. If you go to the next slide, a little history for you. In 2018, the rule was established and we started building out our agency safety plan. In 2020, we did get that approved. The state safety oversight has just recently changed their program standard. So this year, we're asking you to approve this agency safety plan in December. However, in our next annual update, that's actually going to come in 6 months in July. So the state's giving us a 6-month time frame to relook at this agency safety plan, address any gaps that there may be in the new program standard, and bring this back to the agency and the board. So you'll see this again in 6 months. But it is something that we're building a lot of tools on and will take us into the future.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. The activities described in this plan are integrated into our day-to-day operations and budgetary decisions. Your approval of the resolution is recommended.
So for a point of process for the board, getting us back onto the way I've structured the meeting, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve and a motion to second. And then if you have comments, there will be an opportunity for you to provide comments. So is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Was that Director Gonzalez?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, this is Lori Bauman.
Thank you, Director Bauman. So it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments before we vote? And I can't see you, so if you have a comment, just shout it out. Hearing none, I'm going to then call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all. Motion carried. We're moving on now to resolution number 4, which is authorizing a contract modification with Bridge Data Solutions for hardware, software, and related services. And this is a different bridge from the group that's working with us on building affordable housing in the Hollywood district. So, Mr. General Manager.
Thanks, President Simmons, members of the board. This resolution requires a contract modification with Bridge Data Solutions for hardware, software, and related services for our IT division. TriMet entered into a contractual agreement with Bridge for IT goods and services in 2017. However, the original amount and subsequent modification have been nearly exhausted by unanticipated events, which resulted in significant expenses to the division and the agency. The most extreme of which led to $1 million redesign of TriMet's entire IT network. And for those of you that were here, we had a system outage at that time. Therefore, we come before the board today to request another contract modification with Bridge to cover anticipated costs through the remainder of the 5-year contract. This resolution would increase the total authority by about $1.2 million. The amount is accounted for in the IT division's operating budget. Bridge Data's workforce is 16% women and 8% minority. Your approval is recommended. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
This is Lori, so moved.
Second.
Thank you, Director Bauman, and thank you, Director Edwards, for seconding. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments before we vote? Director Bauman.
I do have a question, which is, so this is an increase in the contract amount to address IT issues, and this contract goes through March of 22. Are we expecting that this will address a lot of the outstanding issues? March of 22 is not that far off. Are there more big projects coming after that date?
Let me bring in our CIO, Ethan. Would you?
Thank you, General Manager Dessou. Director Bauman. So this extension is actually because we discovered that we can get some better terms on acquisition software and hardware through this contract than we could without. So we're shifting the way that we're spending some money to be under this contract right now. So there's a new opportunity to save money. This is not, this amount was already in our budget and is not covering items that are beyond our regular maintenance of all of our systems, our routine replacements. So yes, the remaining work to be done in IT will come before the board in future budget year requests. This is not an exceptional request because of some unanticipated bad thing that happened. It's just we can spend money more efficiently.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I don't see anyone else's hand up. So we will go on to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to resolution number 5. So resolution number 5 is determining the terms of the Hollywood Transit Center Joint Development Agreement on reasonable and fair, and the revenue therefrom will be used for public transportation. Mr. General Manager.
Thanks, President Simmons. Members of the board. So when TriMet enters into a joint agreement for development of FTA-funded real estate property, the board must determine 2 key items. The first one, that the terms and conditions of the joint development agreement are reasonable and fair to the agency. And also the number 2 is that any revenue attained through the agreement will be used for public transportation. This particular resolution applies to the joint development agreement for the Hollywood Transit Center property. As you are aware, TriMet has been in negotiations around the property for approximately 2 years and is prepared to enter a 99-year lease agreement with Bridge Housing. Under the proposal, Bridge would build and operate an affordable housing development on the site, while TriMet would conduct a concurrent project to rehabilitate our aging transit center. Because the Hollywood Transit Center property was originally purchased with federal funds, TriMet must get FTA support of the proposed agreement before executing the lease. The budget for TriMet work on site is included in our FY22 engineering and construction operating budget. All proceeds from the lease with Bridge will be used for public transportation. The company has committed to using certified firms for about 50% of the project's design work and 35% of construction work. Your approval is recommended. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 21-1253?
So moved. This is Director Gonzalez.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Edwards? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments before we vote?
Yes, President Simmons, I had a comment. Since we were entering into this contract, I had mentioned earlier, and I think the board was consenting to that as well, that we that the manager, the developer and manager of this property, have an educational component for the tenants that are going to be staying in their building. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to make sure that that was not left out of this contract.
Can I bring in our Director of Oriented Development, Lance Ernst?
Yes.
Sure. Thank you, General Manager DeSue. Yes, we are aware of the board's interest in kind of the supportive services that Bridge will bring to its residents once the apartment complex is developed and up and running, and they have a long-standing commitment to do that. There will be an obligation in the lease agreement for those services, holding them to what they generally do as an affordable housing developer in providing those kinds of services. So we have discussed that with Bridge, and they have committed to doing that, and we will hold them to it through the lease.
And that commitment is in writing?
I'm sorry, could you restate?
That commitment is in writing?
It will be in the lease, yes.
Thank you.
Director Gonzalez, did you have a comment?
I did. I have a question really, and this is something Lance, Guy, either of you I think could speak to. This is a precedent-setting moment for TriMet. So I have a general question, and I'd say, from your perspective, were there some critical decisions that this here is establishing for TriMet that you feel are worth kind of bringing to the board's attention? And more specifically, I see that there's a lease back component for a bathroom facility. Aside from that, is there any other sort of access or property rights that TriMet is absorbing or will maintain in this agreement?
Yeah, thank you, Director Gonzalez. You're right. So part of the deal points will be that Bridge agrees to lease back not only a restroom but also a bike room for TriMet customer use for the entirety of the 99-year ground lease, which that frankly has substantial value. There's also going to be, as part of the TriMet infrastructure project, construction of a courtyard, public paseo, and there will be the plan and the intent is to have a long-term agreement with Bridge to share the expenses to operate and maintain the courtyard area through a third party. So there will be a long-term partnership. And then even beyond that, when what we're calling the phase 2 parcel, which is going to be the remaining developable parcel on the site, is developed, we intend to bring that developer into kind of that partnership, the long-term partnership of not only maintaining the courtyard, but also kind of programming public space in the courtyard and the paseo. So yes, we are considering this to be a long-term partnership with Bridge. We're going into a 99-year lease with them. So we want to make sure that we can continue to work closely together to make this the best public space we can make it.
Thank you. And could you just give us a forecast on that long-term operating agreement partnership? Have you already discussed whether that's going to be a 50-50 with Bridge or any other sort of place we've landed?
Yeah, we're still in those discussions. We're still finalizing the terms of the lease and that agreement. So we haven't completely hit on that quite yet on how we're going to divide all that, but it's going to be definitely a cost share, a fair and reasonable cost share to TriMet. And also, like I said, when the next developer comes on for phase 2, they'll be one of the requirements to develop that site will be to participate in an equal manner as well.
Doug Allen has indicated that the restroom will not be open to the public.
Right.
So,
That's
yeah.
right.
Okay.
I understand those are staff amenities.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any other comments from board members. Thank you for those who had them. So we will go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our resolutions, but now we have two ordinances before us today. We will move now to the first reading of Ordinance 364 regarding an amendment to the TriMet Code. I'm going to ask the General Counsel, Shelley Devine, to read the ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Ms. Board President. Ordinance number 364 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending chapters 28 and 29 of the TriMet Code to limit when law enforcement may conduct fare inspections, create a new offense regarding employee assaults, allow TriMet personnel to address non-criminal violations, and update terminology. This is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. Before we hold a public hearing, General Manager Dessou, would you like to provide an explanation about this ordinance?
Thanks, President Simmons and board directors. Ordinance 364 is a continuation of our reimagined public safety efforts and other recent actions TriMet has taken to ensure a transit system that is safe and welcoming for all. We've taken a balanced and holistic approach to safety, and Ordinance 364 proposes some changes to the TriMet Code in support of those efforts. Generally, it makes 4 changes to Chapter 28 and 29 of the TriMet Code. The first change provides that law enforcement officers cannot ask individuals for evidence of their proof of fare. It puts into writing our current policy, which leaves the task of fare inspection to non-law enforcement personnel. However, it allows for the general manager to authorize transit police to conduct fare inspections should it be necessary for a security reason. The general manager would have to promptly notify the board and provide a report at the next regular board meeting on the reason for transit police involvement and the anticipated length of time that police will be performing the work. The second change to the code addresses unacceptable behavior on our transit system. And this unfortunately includes people hurling bodily fluids at TriMet personnel, which just happened this morning, just to let everybody know. It includes spitting at them. And really talking with our frontline staff, this is a frequent concern that I hear, and it must not be tolerated. So under this change, the general manager can issue a long-term exclusion from the system for anyone who is found to have violated this provision. And just to let you know, board, if you think about someone spitting in your face, that's not pleasant. And I fully intend to do just that. If someone is caught spitting on our employees, they will lose the privilege of riding TriMet for a very long time, in my estimation. The third change allows TriMet personnel to intervene in non-criminal violations of local ordinances or state law. Currently, the code only prohibits activity on the system that violates state or local criminal laws. This means that if a person is violating a non-criminal law or ordinance, such as taking drugs on our bus or trains, our staff can only relay to the police to respond. This change allows TriMet personnel to address behavior that is non-criminal in nature, but important to ensure a safe system. And then the fourth and final change to the code cleans up some outdated terminology and references to the old mobile ticketing app that we no longer offer. We've also updated both chapters 28 and 29 with gender-neutral terminology. With that, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Well, since the board doesn't actually vote on this today, It's time for us to open the public hearing on Ordinance 364. So I ask, is there anyone who would like to testify about this ordinance? Kimberly or whomever is assisting with this.
Hello, President Simmons. I'm looking at the attendee list now to see if we have any hands raised. And it does not appear that we do.
Okay. Then I will close the public hearing, and the second reading on the vote, which the board will actually act on Ordinance 364, will take place at our January meeting. So we'll now move on to the first reading of Ordinance 365, also regarding TriMet code, but much more procedural in nature. And I'll ask General Counsel Shelley Devine to read the ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Ms. Board President. So ordinance number 365 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending chapter 14 of the TriMet code to revise the definition of net earnings from self-employment. This is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. Just a question for you, General Counsel Devine. Has this ordinance, it has been provided to the board, hasn't it, with any changes? So the board has seen that. Okay. I will now open the public hearing on Ordinance 365. Is there anyone who has identified themselves to testify about this ordinance?
Hello, President Simmons. No, I do not see any hands raised at this moment.
Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing. And the second reading on this and vote for this ordinance 365 will also take place at our January meeting. So if there's no other business to come before the board, then I'll adjourn the meeting for today. And our next regular meeting is scheduled for January 26, 2022. And it will be a virtual meeting. I know previously I had indicated we would be attempting to get together in person, but with some of the latest issues with COVID variants, we are having some difficulty also finding a place that is willing to accommodate a public meeting still at this time. So we'll stay meeting virtually until such time as the environment changes where we can get together in person. So, I just want to wish you all a happy holiday, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year, and I hope you have a safe holiday festivities with family and friends. So thank you very much. Thank all of you for your attention and your participation in today's meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you for your leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thank you.